Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's TCG, and I just want to give a quick shout out to my online shop. For those of you who don't know, I do custom trading cards for the One Piece trading card game, as well as Union Arena. I do have a Gundam line releasing shortly as well, so be on the lookout for that. But yeah, every day I'm going to be having some drops coming out. New leaders being pumped out, new action points, Dawn sets, and so every card is of the highest quality standard. They are holographic textured foil, and I have a ton of collabs coming out as well soon too with other content creators and players, and so be on the lookout for that. If you don't want to miss any drops, follow me on Instagram, on Twitter, and yeah, on YouTube as well. I'll be announcing some drops as shorts as well, and so make sure to follow me and check out the shop if you haven't already. Thanks, everyone. Hey, what's going on, everyone? It's TCG here, and I'm coming at you with another Improve Your Gameplay video. But before we begin, I just want to say thank you so much for all the support you guys have given throughout this time, and even from the last video. I really do appreciate it, and so if you do like this sort of content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. It really does help the channel, and so yeah, thank you again, and let's go to the video. Today we're going to be talking about practice sessions, and so this is something that I adopted a little bit later into my TCG journey, and I wish I had adopted earlier on because I felt like the time I spent playing the game could have been better spent doing it more intentionally, right? And so I used to be the type of player that would just grind games out, like not giving it a thought, just kind of playing, which I do think has some merit to itself, right? There is some value to be gained by just the sheer number of games you're playing, right? But just like in any other craft, like whether it's working out or learning a new craft or like learning a new skill, I do think how you approach each session can yield different outputs, right? And so a more refined and intentional type of practice session can yield just better results in a shorter time. And so today we're going to kind of talk through the basic concepts to how you can spend your time playing the game to improve your gameplay the most. And so let's get into that. So the first one is finding a suitable training partner. And this may seem very obvious, but it's actually one of the most important concepts, I think. And so what makes a good training partner? You want someone who's skilled and analytical, someone that can really understand, one that is skilled enough at the game where they can understand why they're doing the play lines that they're doing, ones that can really explain the play lines that are made and understand what felt good or bad throughout the matchup. And so I think having someone that is of equal or even a little bit better skill level than you can really help. And I would encourage people, again, if you are a skilled player, consider adopting someone who is not as skilled so that you can help refine and hone their skills as well. Because some of the most rewarding / skill improving that I've done was actually playing with people that I was helping learn the game, right? So it helped me brush up on my own fundamentals and kind of let me put into words concepts that I knew in my head but never actually verbalized. And so I do think it works both ways, right? And so I would just implore you to consider helping those that want it, first of all, and are willing to learn that way too. But yeah, so skilled and analytical. Secondly, is patient and doesn't tilt easily, right? And so this is very important because during some of these training sessions, you're going to be playing unfavored matchups for multiple hours at a time, right? And so being able to not tilt, but really kind of discuss and approach it in an objective way can really be helpful / give the most benefits for that time spent, right? And so during these training sessions, it's not about necessarily winning, more so than it is about understanding the nuances and really getting into the intricacies. And so if someone is a little too prideful slash is just concerned about winning all the time, I don't think that's necessarily as helpful during these training sessions, right? These are the areas where you want to make mistakes and you want to really hone and refine those things. And so, someone who's patient and doesn't tilt easily goes a long way. And third is open to discussing gameplay reviews, right? And so someone who's open to letting you know, like, oh, when you did X, Y, and Z, I felt pressured in the game, but then when you did A, B, and C, I thought that's actually a mistake. You know, things like that where they're able to kind of review that with you, review end of the board game states, seeing if you could have extended turns, or review certain play lines with you, being like, oh yeah, on your turn 3, you did this, and I think that, did you have this in hand? Because that would have been, better. Things like that. And you don't always have to agree on the play lines, but at least being able to discuss them and seeing the pros and cons of approaching it, I think, is a really big plus. And so for you as a training partner too, I guess a pro tip would be open to discussing varying play lines. People think differently and people have different outputs in mind. I would say you don't always have to agree with everything everyone's saying, but at least be open to seeing, well, what are the strengths and weaknesses of what they're saying? And so that really does help. And lastly, being able to be available for multiple hours at a time. And so I do think that when you're having these practice sessions, it is important to have a good chunk of time to play through multiple games, and then discussing those games after you play through them. And so it does take a little bit of time, and so you want to make sure that you and your training partner have at least some sort of compatible schedule where you're able to link up for those few hours. And so pro tip, getting to know your training partners outside of the game also really helps as well, right? Just the more you get to understand each other, the better you'll be at communicating with each other, and you're going to be spending a lot of time playing the game. And so I think it's been the most rewarding getting to know the person outside of the game as well, to understand really where their strengths are, the things that they kind of struggle with, and that way you can help reinforce the strengths and to work through those weaknesses, because it does translate a lot of times through the game, And so a shout out to my training partners, Phil and E-Man. You guys have been amazing partners, and so kudos to you guys. Man, it's been a lot of fun playing with you guys, and so I just got to give a shout out to the crew. But yeah, oh, and RJ too, but he's been a little MIA lately. Calling him out. Concept 2, play one matchup at a time. And so this is something that I didn't do in the beginning of my journey. I would just play against as many different decks as I could just to get as much exposure, which I do think has its merits too, right? And so, but I would say playing against a singular deck multiple times rather than swapping matchups after every game really does help, right? And I would say play on both curves. And just so you understand, dice rolls, they'll happen. And so different opponents will prefer to go different times. And so play both your first and second curve to really understand what can your deck do against this matchup, going first and going second. And I would say really consider playing with an open hand, showing each other the cards you have, or at least discussing it throughout the game. Again, what we're trying to accomplish here is a deep understanding of the matchup and the deep understanding of, like, in a given time, what can your opponent do to respond, right? And so I think having that knowledge will help you gain an insight into the opponent's piloting decisions that you won't get if you're playing with not an open hand. And so it is weird, though. It's something that you have to kind of get used to. But again, I think it's something that really does help and really does help you understand what your opponent could possibly see that could be an answer to what you're playing. And so, again, so one matchup at a time really does help, right? And so, in a given practice session, if you only have like 2 hours, 3 hours, I would say just practice that one singular matchup for that time, and I think it really does help. Pro tip: play the favorite matchups. Just because you are a favorite doesn't mean you're guaranteed to win without practice. You have to really understand why you're favorite in that matchup too, right? Like, what does your deck do that makes it favored, and are you playing into those advantages, And so it also does help in unfavored matchups as well, like really understanding what makes your deck strong, and what is it about it that feels oppressive in certain matchups. And so it could be slightly different between, if your deck is favored against deck number A and deck number B. There could be different reasons why you're favored into A and B. And so really understanding those, I guess, play lines and strengths will help you guarantee those victories when you play up against it in, say, like a Treasure Cup or regionals. And so please practice your favorite matchups. I would say you'd even want to practice it before you start practicing your unfavored matchups, right? Just because it'll give you a good idea about your deck. And so that's the additional pro tip. And lastly, this is concept number 3. Remember, it's practice sessions, so it's just stress test, right? This is something that we love to do. This is a concept that I always try to do in my practice sessions, like really just try to be as greedy as I can, really try to stress the limits of a deck and how far you can go with the deck. So test the limits of the deck, play out really bad hands, right? Instead of mulliganing, like in tournaments, you will get you'll mulligan into some terrible hands, right? But play them out, see what lines you can achieve even with the worst hands, right? Get used to and get comfortable with the deck to that extent. And on point number 3, this is something that I really do like to kind of test out. And there's these points in the game where you're able to kind of risk going for game, but maybe you don't have guaranteed lethal, right? Maybe your opponent still has a lot of cards in hand. You're not sure if a lot of them are 2Ks or not. You can try to push your game and get lucky and get the game, but I would say stress test to see how long you can extend turns, right? So if you can't guarantee the game, try to see how long you can extend one more turn until you can get the guaranteed game. And so understanding how long your deck can extend the turn will also give you an idea of when you kind of have to just go for it, right? There's many times in tournaments where I tend to rush and try to close out a game. That's just kind of how I am. I've played a lot of red decks in the past, and so I would oftentimes try to pull the trigger too quickly. My opponent would be able to counter out or get lucky on triggers. And then, during the gameplay review, if I just had, played out one more blocker, went for their board, then boom, I could have been safe for another turn and had a much better chance at cracking back and winning on my next turn. And so really, I would say during these times, stress test though, and see just how far you can push your deck. And then as you stress test, this is how you're going to be able to fine-tune the ratios of your deck, right? And so in a given meta deck, if you're thinking about competitive gameplay, in a given deck, most of the time, like 40 cards are probably core and 10 cards are probably flexible, right? And so those 10 card slots are what you're going to be fine-tuning, right, ratio-wise. And so being able to stress test will really help you figure out how to craft a meta deck to really fit your style, right? And so just because, a pro player runs it, a card at a 3 of or 2 of, maybe your playstyle doesn't match that, right? And your tendencies. And so stress testing will help you figure out and fine-tune those ratios, right? Can you get away with running less of this card? Or do you need to run more of another card, right? And so, yeah. And pro tip, it's these practice sessions you really start to understand the ins and outs of your deck. So don't be afraid to make mistakes and take risks and really just feel out the deck. again, practice isn't about winning. It's about really refining and fine-tuning those muscles to make sure that when you do compete, you fully understand your deck. And so that's going to be it for this video. It's something that I really highly recommend you guys try to implement and kind of go through and find your own training partners and practice in this way, because I guarantee it, you will start to see drastic improvements in your gameplay and just your comfort level into playing against certain decks. And so with that being said, thank you so much for watching this video. I have a ton of new releases coming out on my website as well, and so make sure to check it out for your latest custom cards. But yeah, with that being said, OPTCG out.